Welcome to another edition of The Science Pastor. I'm glad you could join me today. My name is Steve. I am the Science Pastor, and we have got a lot to talk about today. First, though, so this is totally off what the planned subject for today was, but just before we started today's podcast, I was reading some news, and there's a news story. The Pentagon finally admits that it is investigating UFOs. Now, this is a topic we're going to have to address in a future Science Pastor podcast, but UFOs are real. Aliens are real. That's a biblical fact. Now, yes, there are some UFO sightings that are weather balloons or ball lightning or methane, things like that. There are some that people just imagine or report falsely, make it up in order to be famous or whatever. But a lot of them are real. It's a real phenomena. There are UFOs, there are aliens, but the aliens don't come from another planet. They come from another dimension. That's right, and this is biblical, because aliens are demons. UFOs are demons, actions of demons. Demons are tricking us. Satan is the father of lies, tricking us into believing in UFOs in order to draw us away from Jesus. That's one of those strategies that is used to draw us away from Jesus. And we will show you how this all is true, the proof that is all true, but that's going to have to be in a future Science Pastor, because I've promised that today we're going to start looking at evolution and the fact that since the 1960s, scientists have known that Darwinism and neo-Darwinism, neo meaning new Darwinism, are impossible, could not have happened. And we're going to get to that today in today's Science Pastor podcast. Let me switch the screen, though, because we're going to be talking about what I call my memory rock. I'm going to start by talking about this. This is a memory rock. Now, that's the name that I've given to this rock. It's because I use this to help me remember things. And the reason why I have this memory rock is because a couple of days ago, my wife and I were hiking in eastern Wyoming. Now, we live at sea level, pretty much at sea level, and eastern Wyoming, we were at about 6,000 feet. So we're out hiking, and we come to this place where fairly steep hill. And what happens is that I start breathing hard. And when that happened, I remember what we were talking about last week with the fire and how our metabolism works, and just remembered some of the details. Now, the purpose of a memory rock, we had left on this hike. It was not planned. It was just kind of on the spur of the moment. I had left my phone in the car, didn't have anything to write with, and these thoughts about how our muscles work and how respiration work all came to mind, and I wanted to remember it. So what I do is just pick up a random rock that is totally of no importance at all, and I put it in my pocket. And then when I find the rock in my pocket, I remember, oh, hey, I wanted to talk about whatever it is I wanted to remember. So this is just a memory rock from Wyoming. But let me talk about what happened there. I started walking up the hill and I started breathing hard. And of course, that makes sense. That usually happens without us even thinking about it. We're at a higher elevation. I'm starting to exert myself. My legs, the muscles in my legs need more oxygen. Now, do you remember from last week, why do my legs need more oxygen? Because the mitochondria in the cells, in each cell, in this case, the cells of my leg muscles, need to generate more energy in order to get me up that hill. That takes more energy. So they need more oxygen. So the body starts providing more oxygen, which is just amazing to me anyway. How do my lungs know that I need more oxygen down to my legs? But the whole body starts functioning, supplying more oxygen to my legs, which allows the mitochondria to metabolize the food we've eaten and produce energy in the form of ATP. And then that energy powers my muscles. And also I start breathing harder because at a higher elevation, I need to breathe in and out more to get the volume of oxygen that I need. And I'm not used to breathing at 6,000 feet, so that has a factor too. And my body adjusts for that too, for the higher elevation, breathing in and out more so that I take in more oxygen. Then when I get to the top of the hill and start down, I keep breathing hard until my body remedies that imbalance of not having enough oxygen to create all the energy that I needed. I had gone into somewhat of a deficit, that because there is oxygen stored in your body, and then it brings everything back into balance. That whole system of getting the right amount of oxygen down to the cells, each individual cell in my legs, so that each individual cell where the mitochondria is can produce the right amount of energy is just amazing. And not only that, the cells in my legs, which are some of my bigger muscles, have more mitochondria in them than, say, the cells up here in my eyebrows, because your body is designed so that you can provide more energy to your legs. So you have more mitochondria, which are the power plants of the cells that can produce more energy, and thus I can walk up that hill. But here's what's amazing, and it has to do with the picture I've got on the computer back there. It's how your muscles work. I learned probably in high school how muscles work, high school biology, that they contract in order to, that's how you do things. In fact, here is some solid proof that evolution is impossible. What I want you to do, take your hand, hold your hand out flat like that. Just hold it flat. I'm going to turn sideways here. Hold your hand flat, and then as quick as you can, as hard as you can, make a fist, just like that. Make a fist, just like that. There you go. You have just proved evolution is impossible. Huh? How? Okay. What you did is, in order to make a fist, the muscles in your fingers need to contract, and they actually have to do it very quickly, coordinated so that all of your fingers contract at the same time, and actually coordinated so your thumb goes inside or your thumb goes outside. So all of that is coordinated. In fact, you can just do one or two, kind of. That there is an amazing action when you understand how muscles work. For muscles to contract, there are two strands. Muscles are made up of two strands. One is called actin and one is called myosin. And now this is getting down to the microscopic level. The more detail, the closer you look at something, the more you look at the microscopic level of things, you just get amazed at how complex it is and how impossible it is to evolve. And by the way, the level that we're showing here on the screen is still not down as small as you can get, down to the cellular level. That even gets more complex. So we're just going to look at what happens at the level of the actin and the myosin. And by the way, this is from a video. Here's a URL for that video. You can watch this video, shows how muscles work. It's a good video to watch. There are some things that are wrong, as happens when things are simplified, because it shows the ATC coming into the myosin in order to power it, and actually that ATC comes into the cells that make up the myosin, and then it goes into the mitochondria, as we saw last week, or it comes from the mitochondria and powers each individual cell. The power plants are in each individual cell. So, but it's good. It shows how things work. But here's what's amazing. You have the actin and the myosin, and what happens is the myosin has little grabbers coming up, and they grab the top one and they pull it. And what you have is, this is how a muscle contracts, because the actin moves this way and the myosin moves this way, and there's little grabbers that come up, and there's little bumps on the actin that they grab onto and pull and pull and pull, and that causes these to move, and that's how a muscle contracts. But now think about this. Say we don't have muscles yet. There's some kind of living organism, doesn't have muscles, and there's a mutation, and it causes the actin to come into existence. So now you have actin, and we'll assume that the mutation was incredible. So, because actin is pretty complex. So actin could not come about because of one mutation, but it did. And so here's your actin. It's got the little bumps on it. There's no myosin. So what happens? You have actin. It has no function. It'll be eliminated by natural selection. You get the myosin. It forms. And by, again, some strange sequences of mutations. So you get the myosin, and it's got nothing to grab onto. It has no function, and eventually it'll be eliminated by natural selection. You need the actin to form, which is a fiber. You need the bumps on the actin to form, where the myosin can grab it. You need the myosin to form with the little arms, with the little grabbers. They're purple on the picture in the back. That can grab it and move it, and it has to know which way to move. You can't have one going this way and one going this way. All these little myosins have to all move in conjunction, going the same direction. For this to evolve, for this to happen by chance, selected by natural selection, is impossible. It is impossible, and that's what's happening in your hand. That's why when you do this, you're seeing all of this action going on. You're showing that evolution is impossible. These things are all dependent. It has to have been created all at once. Evolving one part at a time just would not work. And as you get down even to a finer detail, down to the cellular level, it gets even more complex. And it just could not happen. So go ahead, watch that video. Here's the URL again. Watch that video, and you'll learn how muscles work. So that was a little rabbit trail that we were going down that resulted from our hike in Wyoming. Today we want to start talking about and understanding why scientists since the 1960s, so this is going back more than 50 years, have known that Darwinism, neo-Darwinism, is impossible. But before we do that, we need to start defining our terms. For example, defining what is the definition of evolution, because unless we are all using the same definition, then we're not going to be able to communicate. And evolution is a very tricky word that the definition keeps changing. Depending on who you're talking with, and even a person in one conversation, even in one sentence, they can start out with evolution meaning this, and then it means that. In fact, I took a course several years ago. It was a course in how to teach students. It was a course for teachers, how to teach students, primarily junior high, high school students, about evolution and how to get them to believe in evolution. So I'm taking this course, and I brought up to the instructor, I said, well, if we're going to teach about something, shouldn't we know what that something is? Shouldn't we define what evolution is? And he literally said, no, I'm not going to define evolution. He refused to define it. And that brings up a problem, because if you define evolution correctly, then that immediately proves evolution is impossible. It can't happen. Now I'm going to show you what I mean. First, I kind of want to show you what they're doing. I have a little illustration here. I'd like to bring the camera in a little bit closer. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you something called the shell game. And it's very similar to what happens in evolution, where you think one thing's happening and something else is happening. To do this, we've got 3 cups here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a $20 bill. The way this game normally works is I'm going to put the $20 bill in one of these cups, okay? And then I'm going to mix them up. So here we go. We're mixing up the cups. And what I want you to do is see if you can pick now. They're all mixed up. Uh-oh. I screwed up, didn't I? Oh, good grief. I've got 3 cups of 3 different colors. That makes it kind of easy to pick which cup has the $20 bill in. Let me mix them up again, but that's not really going to help. So well, let's put that one over there. It doesn't matter where we put it. We'll put it over here. So what cup contains the $20 bill? The blue one? The green one? Okay, I can hear everybody. It's obvious. It's in the yellow one, right? No $20 bill. It's over here in the blue one. See, you got fooled. And that's what happens with evolution. They define, well, this is what evolution means, and then later on, this is what evolution means. Things change without you even knowing how they change. So that means we have a problem. If we can't tie down the definition of evolution, if the definition keeps changing during the discussion, so we don't know what cup is actually the definition of evolution, then we have a problem. We really can't have any conversation at all. We need to know, what does this word evolution means? And to do that, I've got some textbooks here. I thought we'd look into some biology textbooks. For example, here's a high school biology textbook. We'll start with that one. We're going to go to the back of the book where the glossary is. And in this textbook, it's Miller and Levine's Biology, one of the most used, most popular biology textbooks. It defines evolution as a change over time, the process by which modern organisms have descended from ancient organisms. Change over time. What does that mean? I mean, I have a 1977 van that I bought brand new, and now it's 2019. It's changed a lot over time. There's a lot of rust spots on it now. Does that mean my van has evolved? Well, no. No, it doesn't. Change over time is a very broad definition. So that makes it easy. You can go and you just look at the world and say, look at how things have changed over time. There it is. There's proof evolution is true. And that's not proof at all. That definition's way too broad. So let's try a different one here. This is biology. Raven Johnson doesn't have a glossary, so we're going to turn to the section where it's discussing evolution. Actually, that's at the beginning. We're going to go to the beginning is what we want to look at here. And the definition of evolution, it is the operation of natural laws that produce change over time. Not much help either. We're back to change after change over time, just bringing in that the cause of that change are natural laws, but that still doesn't really tell us anything. Let's try another one here. Understanding biology. This one's got a glossary, so we'll go to the back in the glossary. And this one, evolution, a process in which the forms and overall genetic structure of organisms changes with time. Okay, this one's added a little more information. It's the change in genetic structure, that change over time. That's what evolution is. But we see different genetic structures in a lot of things that are the same. Take dogs, for example. It's a good example. It's used a lot. And dogs originally came from a wolf, and they've been bred to create different breeds of dogs. So you have a Chihuahua and a St. Bernard. They have different genetic structures. Does that mean we've seen evolution? No, they're both still dogs. When we talk about evolution, now we were looking in the textbooks, they're talking about change over time. What do we mean by evolution? We mean that we started with one type of organism, and in this case, evolution starts with a single-cell organism. We're not going to deal with the problem right now of where did that come from? How did we get a single-cell organism? But from that single-cell organism, you get all the different forms of life, such as humanity. And so you have to realize that a single-cell organism is a lot simpler than a human being, for example. There's a lot more information encoded in our DNA to make a human being with all that we are compared to a single-cell organism. So you have to take that into account. You can't just say change over time. It has to be a change that results in an increase in information, an increase in complexity. That has to be part of the definition, and we're not getting that. We're just getting a change over time related to a change in the genetics. That's not defining evolution. So let's go to a genetics textbook now. Genetics from Genes to Genomes. And we'll look in the glossary here and see how this book defines evolution. Evolution. In the study of genetics, evolution is defined as changes in allele frequency in populations over multiple generations. Changes in what's an allele? Allele essentially is a mutated gene, so that you can actually have duplicate genes in your DNA, and an allele is one. It's a form of the gene, but it's not the same as it was originally. So the gene has changed. So again, that's pretty much the same definition that we got in the biology book, that evolution is a change over time caused by a change in the genes. Okay, really doesn't tie it down. That's still very, very broad. All the different breeds of cats, different breeds of dogs, different breeds of horses, all can be defined as evolution. But they're not becoming anything other than horses, dogs, and cats. And evolution would require that you start with one animal, say a dog, and it evolves, and then you get something that is definitely not a dog. It evolves into something new. And we don't see that. What we see is that every living being reproduces after its own kind. Dogs make dogs, cats make cats, horses make horses, people make people, and apes make apes. We don't see anything different. There's a lot of change possible. Yes, God has designed us so that we can adapt to our situation. We can change within certain limits. People don't change into something else, but we can adapt. Dogs, we've even seen that with humans causing the change in dogs so that you have different breeds. Huskies that can pull sleighs and live in Alaska, and Chihuahuas, I don't know where they live, but they're not going to pull a sled. Very different, but they're still both dogs. Now, I do have a book here. We're not going to get into it today. A book on the molecular biology of the cell that talks about and says, this is how we get new information into our genome. And it describes some processes that supposedly add additional information through gene duplication and partial copying of genes. It doesn't work, and we're not going to get into that today. We're just trying to define evolution. And what we're finding is that the creation deniers, I'm going to use that term, creation deniers use a definition of evolution that is so broad that it includes everything. And that's why they can look out at the world and say, you creationists, look at the world. It's obvious evolution happens. You can just see it happening everywhere. And what they're talking about is change over time, which is happening everywhere. But if you're defining evolution correctly, not playing some kind of shell game with the definition of evolution, that is not evolution. Evolution must be a change that results in an increase in information and an increase in complexity. One of the known facts about mutations is that mutations in general are either neutral, meaning the mutation doesn't cause anything, doesn't result in anything, just happens and no change, or mutations are bad. They cause damage. For example, if mutations caused good things to happen and made us evolve to become better and better, why don't we all just run down to our neighborhood nuclear power plant, go into the reactor, and get ourselves radiated with radiation? Why don't we do that? Because we'll die. The mutations are harmful, and we cannot survive that many mutations that would come from being exposed to radiation in a reactor. So we know mutations are harmful. Now, yes, there are some beneficial mutations. For example, one of the most common ones that we hear about, common example of a beneficial mutation is in bacteria in a hospital, bacteria that become resistant to antibiotics. So what's happened there? Well, what has happened is we have a bacteria, and the way an antibiotic works is, such as penicillin, the bacteria takes in the penicillin, and the bacteria metabolizes that. We talked about metabolism last week. Essentially, that's where it takes it and turns it into energy. And what happens is the bacteria takes in the penicillin, metabolizes it, becomes a poison, kills the bacteria. So what has happened is the bacteria mutates, and it loses the ability to metabolize penicillin. What happens then? It takes in the penicillin, nothing happens, the poison's not produced, and the antibiotic cannot kill the bacteria. What has happened? Has the bacteria actually gotten better? Has it gained information? Has it become more complex? No, it has gone downhill. It has lost something. It has lost the ability to metabolize the antibiotic, and so it's able to survive. That's called de-evolution, even though it has a beneficial effect. So that's what is happening there. So today we're just trying to get evolution defined, and then in the next Science Pastor we're going to pick up and talk about why it is that scientists have known since the 1960s that Darwinian evolution is impossible. So now we have evolution defined not simply as change over time, not simply as, for example, speciation, which means that it creates a new species. That would be, for example, if we have a salamander that lives in Oregon, and then some of that colony of salamanders moves down to California and starts a new colony, and now we have two separate colonies. And these salamanders in Oregon have spots, and then over time, these salamanders down in California develop stripes. So you got two different types, two different breeds of salamanders, let's call it. And actually, after a while, the two groups can't even interbreed together. So we have two species now of salamanders. But what are they? They are still salamanders. Yes, that's speciation. We have a new species of salamander down there in California, but it is still a salamander. It's not evolution. So that's very important that we define evolution correctly. Evolution must result in something new. The salamander goes down here, and eventually it becomes something that is not a salamander. We have never observed that happening in nature. Never has happened. But that's the definition of evolution. Something that through an increase in information, through an increase in complexity becomes something else. And actually, you don't even need the increase in information or increase in complexity. You only need that if you're going to evolve from a single cell organism and everything gets better and better and better and better. You could even say, well, we have evolution. Here was a salamander, and here now we have a gronchi. They're two totally different things. We never see that. It does not happen. Thank you for watching this episode of The Science Pastor. We are way over time, but we're glad you could join us. Now that we got a definition of evolution, we'll move on, talk about why evolution can't happen. It's impossible. We'll see you next time. Oh, by the way, if you have a question, if you have a comment on what you heard today, send it to me, question@sciencepastor.com, and we will see you next time.